I found out my mom was faking cancer in the least dramatic way possible, which somehow made it worse. No hidden file in a dusty attic, no overheard confession, no stranger pulling me aside in a parking lot. It was a Tuesday afternoon and there were fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, my mother wheezing for effect on a gurney behind me, and a young doctor scrolling through her chart with a little frown between her eyebrows as she said, "I'm not seeing any oncology records here. Are you sure she's a cancer patient?" For a second I thought I'd misheard her. I'd been awake for 27 hours, most of them spent hovering over my mother's bed at home while she clutched her stomach and moaned that, "This is it, the tumors are spreading," until finally my husband begged me to call 911. "What do you mean, no oncology records?" I asked. "She's stage 3. Colon cancer, maybe ovarian, they've gone back and forth. She's been in treatment for 5 years." The doctor, a woman young enough to be my oldest child, glanced up from the screen. "I see some imaging from a few years ago," she said. "A colonoscopy that showed diverticulosis, nothing malignant. I see prescriptions for anti-anxiety medication and painkillers from her primary care physician. But I don't see any visits to an oncologist, no chemo orders, no radiation notes, no biopsy reports. Where was she getting treatment?" "Here," I said automatically, then faltered. "Well, not here. At the big hospital downtown, and at the cancer center by the mall. She always went alone because she didn't want us to see her like that. And..." My words trailed off as I realized how that sounded out loud. Because she didn't want us to see her like that. Because she insisted on going alone. Because every time I'd offered to come, she'd cried and said, "I can't bear for my babies to watch me die by inches." The doctor tapped her keyboard. "We're connected with both those networks," she said. "If she'd had anything done in state, it should be here. Are you sure there wasn't a miscommunication about the diagnosis? Sometimes patients hear precancerous, and it gets exaggerated." She shaved her head. I blurted, as if hair loss were a notarized document. "She lost weight. She has a port." The doctor's gaze flicked to my mother's chest, visible above the hospital gown. "She doesn't have a port," she said gently. "There's no surgical scar." My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might throw up. "That's impossible," I said. "She was bald. I've seen her throw up after chemo. We did a GoFundMe. There were pictures." The doctor's face softened. "I'm not saying she's not sick," she said. "She clearly has some respiratory stuff going on. And at her age there can be many overlapping issues. But whatever's happening right now, it's not a cancer crisis. I'm going to order some basic labs and a chest x-ray, and we'll go from there. In the meantime, why don't you sit down? You look like you're about to faint." I sat. Not because she told me to, but because my knees suddenly had the structural integrity of pudding. Behind me, Mom groaned theatrically. "Rachel," she gasped. Tell them about the tumors. They're crushing my lungs." The doctor glanced at me. I stared at my mother. She looked terrible, but she always looked terrible when there was an audience. Pale, sweaty, a hand pressed to whatever part of her body was supposedly failing that week. Her gray wispy hair was tucked into a beanie. Her hospital bracelet flashed on her wrist as she reached for me. "You're going to be okay," I heard myself say, the same script I'd recited 1,000 times. "We're in the right place." The words tasted different now. The doctor stepped out to put in orders. I turned my chair so I was facing my mother. "What's your oncologist's name again?" I asked casually, like I'd simply forgotten. "Which one?" she said without missing a beat. "You know I've had so many." "The current one," I said. "The one you saw last week. The one who said things looked bad." She licked her lips. "Dr. Anderson," she said. "At the center by the mall." "Why?" "First name." I asked. "I don't know," she snapped. "You think I pay attention to that? They all blur together, Rachel. You know that." "What about the nurse?" I pressed. "The one you said held your hand during chemo. The one you cried about because she reminded you of me." Mom's eyes narrowed just for a second. "Why are you interrogating me?" she demanded. Isn't it enough that I might be dying? You always did make everything harder than it has to be. It was such a familiar line that my brain almost slipped into the groove it had worn over 50 years of being my mother's emotional support animal. But behind it, there was this new awful question growing like a bruise. What if none of it was real? The doctor says she can't see any cancer treatments in your chart, I said, my voice shaking. She says there's no record of chemo, or radiation, or oncology appointments. How is that possible, Mom? Mom's face went slack for a heartbeat, then rearranged itself into outrage so fast I almost missed the gap. Well, of course she can't, she snapped. You think these systems talk to each other? You think one hospital just shares my private information with every Tom, Dick, and Harry who clicks a button? HIPAA, Rachel. Ever heard of it? She said HIPAA like a magical spell that could cover anything. She said they're connected. I insisted. She checked. Twice. Then she's incompetent, Mom said. You should report her. This is how people die. You know, when doctors don't read the right files. She coughed, a dry, unconvincing sound. Maybe it's time you find me a new oncologist. Someone who actually cares. I stared at her, really stared, the way you don't stare at someone you've spent your whole life orbiting because it feels rude to look that closely. Her skin was papery, but not yellowed the way chemo patients I'd seen were. Her arms were thinner than they used to be, but there was still a softness to her. Her nails were painted a careful pale pink. For someone allegedly dying of cancer, she looked curated. What's the name of the cancer center? I asked. You drive past it every time you take me, she said irritably. Don't play dumb. Humor me, I said. I've had a lot on my mind. Say it out loud. She rolled her eyes. You know I can never remember it, she said. They're always changing names. It's something with hope in it. Or maybe mercy. They're all the same. Jesus, Rachel, why are you grilling me when I can barely breathe? She reached for her oxygen mask, which wasn't even attached to anything yet. I realized with a cold clarity that made my fingers tingle that if I went out to the nurse's station right then and asked them to call her oncologist to pull her chemo schedule, there would be nothing. I realized that I didn't know the name of a single doctor who allegedly kept my mother alive for the last 5 years. I realized that the pill bottles on her nightstand, the ones I'd been faithfully doling out, were all from her primary care doctor, labeled for pain and nerves and sleep. Nothing about chemo. Nothing about immunotherapy. Nothing about cancer. I'll be right back, I said, standing up. Don't leave me, she hissed, fingers clawing at my wrist. You always leave me when I need you most. My body reacted the way it always does to that sentence. Heart spike, guilt flood, urge to sit back down and apologize for something I hadn't done yet. But my hand slipped out of her grip, almost of its own accord. I'm just going to ask a few questions, I said. If everything's fine, then everything's fine. Her eyes flashed. It's never fine with you, she said. You always have to dig. I walked out to the nurse's station anyway. Hi, I said to the same doctor, who was typing at a computer. Sorry, I'm not trying to be that family member, but is there any chance my mother could have gotten cancer treatment under a different name? Or out of state? The doctor gave me a look that was both kind and tired. We checked nationwide claims under her social security number, she said. I'm seeing some imaging, some ER visits, and a lot of office visits for chronic pain and anxiety, but nothing that looks like oncology. If she was paying cash somewhere off the grid, that would be highly unusual. And she would still have had to get lab work done somewhere. My mouth went dry. Could she be confused? I asked. Like, could she believe she has cancer when she doesn't? The doctor hesitated. Sometimes patients misunderstand diagnoses, she said carefully. They hear the word tumor and don't understand that not all tumors are malignant. They hear suspicious cells and assume the worst. It would be worth talking to her primary care doctor about what exactly she was told. And if she's not confused, I said. If she made it up? Saying the words out loud felt like dropping a lit match in a room full of gas. The doctor glanced down the hallway toward my mom's room, then back at me. That's a bigger conversation, she said. For now, we're going to treat what we see in front of us, which is some shortness of breath and dehydration. We'll get her stabilized and you can follow up with her providers about the rest. Are you her healthcare proxy? Yes, I said automatically. I'd signed those papers 3 years earlier, when Mom tearfully told me she needed someone responsible, in case things went bad. I was the responsible one. I'd always been the responsible one. The doctor nodded. Then you're within your rights to request full records from her primary care doctor and anyone else she's seen, she said. It might help to have everything in one place. Okay, I said, though what I wanted to do was run screaming into the parking lot. Instead, I went back to the room and took my seat by the bed. Mom was scrolling on her phone. She quickly flipped it over when I walked in. So, she said, what did the genius have to say? They're going to do an X-ray, I said. And some labs. Labs, she muttered. They love their labs. Did they say anything about the cancer? I met her eyes. They said they don't see any oncology records, I said. They said there's no sign of cancer in your chart. She stared at me. Then she laughed, high-pitched and bitter. Of course they don't, she said. Stupid computers. That doesn't mean anything. Her gaze darted to the hall. You didn't tell them I was terminal, did you? I don't want to be treated like a lost cause. I want all the measures. Full code, remember? We talked about this. We had talked about it. Over and over, usually late at night when she couldn't sleep and wanted to go over her funeral music choices in excruciating detail. It doesn't look like you're a lost cause, I said slowly. It looks like you're not a cancer patient. Her face darkened. So now you're calling me a liar, she hissed. After everything I've been through? After everything I've done for you? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because the truth was, I didn't know if I was calling her a liar or admitting to myself that I'd been willing to be lied to for years. Either way, the ground under my feet was not where I thought it was. To understand how I got there, how a reasonably intelligent 47-year-old woman ended up sitting in a hospital room realizing she didn't actually know whether her mother had ever had cancer, you have to go back to the beginning. Or at least to the first time my mother said the word. It was 5 years earlier, almost to the month. My dad had died the year before of a heart attack in his sleep, the way everyone says they'd choose to go if they had the option. Quick. Painless. The only problem with quick and painless is that it leaves everyone else with the slow and painful aftermath. Mom took it hard. They'd been married 43 years. He'd been her driver, her fixer, her excuse. You know how your father is, she'd say whenever she wanted to duck responsibility. Without him, she had to face herself. She didn't like it. I did what eldest daughters everywhere do. I stepped in. I went over twice a week to help with bills and grocery shopping. I took her to her doctor's appointments when she let me. Mostly she preferred to go alone and report back, spinning the details like cotton candy. Just high blood pressure, she'd say, and a touch of arthritis. Nothing I can't handle. Then one day she called me sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. It's bad, she gasped. It's really bad this time. I left work in the middle of a meeting and drove the 20 minutes to her house on autopilot, my hands sweating on the wheel. I found her at the kitchen table, a crumpled tissue in her hand, a manila envelope in front of her. They found something, she whispered. A mass. They say it's probably cancer. The room spun. I remember sitting down hard on the chair opposite her. What kind of mass? I asked. Where? She pressed a hand to her belly. In my stomach area, she said. Or maybe lower. I don't know. It was all a blur. He said words like lesion and suspicious and we need to act fast. Did he say cancer? I pressed. Exactly that word? She sniffled. He said he was very concerned, she said. That's Dr. For you're dying, Rachel. I just know it. I asked to see the papers. She slid the envelope across the table reluctantly. Inside was a printout of a CT scan report. I'm not a doctor. I didn't understand most of the language, but I saw diverticulosis and moderate inflammation and recommend colonoscopy and nothing about tumors. This says you need more tests, I said. It doesn't say cancer. That's what they always say at first, Mom said, eyes wide. They don't want to scare you. But I saw the look on his face. I know what this is. That was how it started. Not with a diagnosis, but with a look. Over the next few months, she had more tests. I offered to come. She always had a reason why I shouldn't. It's just a consult, she'd say. You have work. The kids have school. Your brother never comes around. Your sister's off doing God knows what in California. You don't need to waste your day sitting in a waiting room. So I drove her to the front doors and picked her up hours later when she walked back out, looking pale and tragic. What did they say? I'd ask. It's not good, she'd reply. But I don't want to talk about it in the car. I'm too exhausted. Somehow we never got around to talking about it later either. There was always something else. A bad day. A worse day. A day she was too tired to sit up. A day she was feeling hopeful and didn't want to jinx it. The first time she shaved her head, she did it in the kitchen sink with my old razor. I can't stand watching it fall out in clumps, she said, her voice shaking, as I stood there uselessly holding a towel. Better to take control. I remember crying as I watched her gray hair fall into the sink. You're so brave, I said. Don't say that, she snapped. I hate when people say that. Do I look brave to you? She looked furious. But then she put on a bright scarf and took a selfie and posted it on Facebook with a caption about fighting like a girl. The comments flooded in. You've got this, Liz. Praying for you. You're the strongest woman I know. She soaked it up like sunlight. When she decided she couldn't live alone anymore, it wasn't really a discussion. I can't face this house by myself, she said, standing in the doorway of the bedroom she'd shared with my father. Every corner reminds me of him, of before. I thought I could handle it, but with the chemo and the nausea and the fatigue. She trailed off, letting the sentence hang like a question. You could move in with us, I heard myself say. At least for a while. I could never impose, she said immediately. I've always said I'd never be a burden to my children. You wouldn't be a burden, I lied. We'll make it work. My husband Tom and my kids Emma and Josh did what they always do when I bring home a crisis. They adjusted. We turned our dining room into a bedroom for Mom because she didn't want to climb stairs. Tom picked up extra shifts at the firehouse to cover the grocery bills that ballooned with her special diet. The kids learned to tiptoe around her chemo naps. Mom groaned inside and made a point of telling anyone who visited how exhausted she was from treatment, how she couldn't have gotten through this without Rachel, how my siblings had their own lives and couldn't be expected to show up. My brother Mark lives 30 minutes away with his wife and 2 kids. My sister Lacey lives in California and might as well be on Mars as far as my mother is concerned. Lacey always was selfish, Mom would say, accepting another casserole from the ladies at church. Some people just aren't built for family. In my head, I heard a different version of the story. The one where Lacey had a panic attack at 16 when Mom faked a fainting spell in the grocery store because she didn't want to pay for a cart full of food. The one where Lacey moved across the country at 20 saying, I can't breathe in this house. And Mom told everyone she'd fallen in with the wrong crowd, instead of admitting she might have had something to do with it. She'll come around. Mom would sigh about Lacey's lack of calls. Probably when she hears I'm sick. Everyone comes home for cancer. We set up a GoFundMe because Mom insisted her insurance didn't cover everything. She wrote the description herself. Widowed grandmother battling stage 3 cancer, it said. Refuses to give up. There were pictures of her in her headscarf looking fragile. We raised almost $15,000. People were generous. I cried reading the messages. You were there for me when my mom died. One donor wrote, let us be there for you. Mom read every comment out loud. See, she'd say, people love me. I matter. Every time I tried to talk about practicalities, she melted down. We need to talk about your will, I said once, sitting at the edge of her bed with a notebook. If this gets worse, we need to know what you want. She burst into tears. You're trying to bury me, she sobbed. I knew it. You just want my things. You want to rush me into the grave so you can divide up my jewelry. You have 4 rings and a box of costume necklaces, I said, baffled. What would I be rushing for? But the fight was already in motion. By the time Tom came home, she was telling him I'd threatened to put her in a home. He gave me a look, that tight-lipped, exhausted look spouses give each other when there's no good answer. Maybe lay off the death talk, he murmured. She's scared. So I laid off. I stopped asking questions. I lined up her pills in little plastic boxes and drove her to appointments I wasn't allowed to attend and worked extra shifts to cover the things her GoFundMe and supposed insurance didn't. When my brother did show up, he brought bags of organic groceries and posted photos with hashtags like #CancerSucks and #FamilyFirst. You're such a good son, people commented. Driving all the way out there to see your mom. He lived 23 miles away. I saw the receipts from the nice grocery store. They came from Mom's credit card, which I assumed she paid off with that GoFundMe money. I didn't think to ask whose name the card was actually in. That came later. Somewhere in the middle of all this, I lost track of my own life. Emma graduated high school. Josh started playing varsity basketball. Tom got promoted to lieutenant. I was there for some of it physically, but mentally I was always half listening for Mom to call my name from the next room. If I went out with friends and turned my phone off for an hour, I'd come back to 10 missed calls from her and 3 voicemails telling me she felt ignored and abandoned. You know I'm dying, right? She'd say when I walked through the door. Do you really want to spend what little time we have left at Applebee's? She had a way of turning any attempt at self-care into an act of cruelty. I grew resentful. Of course I did. I snapped sometimes. I'd slam a cabinet or raise my voice when she called me for the 4th time in an hour to come fluff her pillows. Every time I lost my temper, she'd go limp and say, I knew this would happen if I moved in. I knew you'd start to hate me. Then I'd feel guilty and make her tea and rub her feet and apologize for the 100th time. When Lacey finally called after years of radio silence, it was because she'd heard about the cancer through a mutual friend on Facebook. Is it true? She asked, her voice tight. Does Mom really have cancer? Yes, I said without hesitation. She's stage 3. She says it's not good. What's the diagnosis? Lacey pressed. Where is it? What's the treatment plan? She doesn't like to talk about the details, I said. But she had chemo. She's very tired. There was a long pause. Ratch, Lacey said slowly. You realize she's pulled stuff like this before, right? The words hit something in my chest that I didn't want to name. What are you talking about? I snapped. She's never had cancer before. No, Lacey said. But remember the lupus? The fibromyalgia? The mystery autoimmune disease that just happened to flare up whenever we had something important coming up she didn't want us to do. I did remember. I remembered missed field trips because Mom couldn't get out of bed, canceled sleepovers because stress triggers my episodes, dramatic fainting spells at parent-teacher conferences that always seemed to happen when I'd done something she didn't like. Those were real, I said weakly. She had tests. She had tests that showed nothing, Lacey countered. She told us what she wanted us to hear. She loved the attention. You know that. And when doctors didn't back her up, she said they were stupid or biased or didn't listen to women. So what are you saying? I demanded. That she's making this up? You think she shaved her head and puked for sympathy? I think she knows exactly how to make herself the center of every room she's in, Lacey said. And I think you're the one paying the price. Again. I hung up on her. I told myself she was being cruel, ungrateful, bitter. I told myself she couldn't stand that I had a relationship with Mom that she didn't. I told myself a lot of things instead of admitting that a small, scared part of me agreed with her. That was the state I was in when my mom collapsed in our living room and begged me not to call 911 because it's just the cancer. I don't want to waste anyone's time. Then moaned louder and louder until Josh, shaking, said, "Mom, please, she looks bad." And I finally dialed. And now here we were, with a doctor telling me there was no record of any cancer treatment and my mother acting like I'd betrayed her by asking. The tests came back. Her lungs were clear. No masses. No fluid. Her labs showed mild anemia. A little dehydration. Nothing dramatic. We're going to keep her overnight for observation because of her age and the shortness of breath, the doctor said. But medically speaking, there's nothing emergent. I'd follow up with her primary doctor about managing her chronic conditions and clarifying any past diagnoses. Chronic conditions like what? I asked. The doctor glanced at the chart. Generalized anxiety, she said. Depression. Chronic pain. There's a note here about possible factitious disorder from a psych consult a few years back. Factitious, I repeated. What does that mean? It's when someone presents as ill or intentionally produces symptoms, she said carefully, usually as a way to get attention or care. It can be very complex, and I don't want to armchair diagnose your mother, but it might be helpful to read up on it. My ears rang again. So you're saying she's making herself sick? The doctor shook her head. I'm saying she has a history of complicated interactions with the medical system, she said. How you proceed from here is up to you, but you're not obligated to manage it alone. That night, after Tom took the kids home and the nurses settled Mom into a room, I went out to my car, pulled up the hospital's guest Wi-Fi, and searched factitious disorder. I fell down a rabbit hole of articles and case studies about people who fake or induce illness in themselves for attention, about others who do it to their children, about the blurry line between genuine suffering and manipulative behavior. I saw words like Munchausen and secondary gain and enmeshment. I saw myself in the descriptions of children of people like that. The exhaustion, the guilt, the way their lives bent around the illness like trees growing around a fence post. I called Lacey. For the first time in years, when she saw my name, she picked up on the first ring. "Hey," she said. "How's Mom?" "She doesn't have cancer," I said. My voice came out flat. There are no oncology records. There's a psych note about factitious disorder. I've been an idiot. Lacey exhaled loudly, like she'd been holding her breath for 5 years. "Oh, Ratch," she said softly. "I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" I laughed, a short, hysterical sound. "I've given her 5 years of my life," I said. "My savings, my kids' childhood, my marriage almost fell apart twice. We raised money in this town. People prayed. And she's been—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "She's been doing what she always does," Lacey said. "Just on a bigger stage. Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded, even though some part of me knew she'd tried. "Why didn't you make me see it?" "I did try," she said. "You hung up on me. And then Mom told everyone I was spreading lies because I couldn't stand that she was getting attention. She said I was jealous. She said I was unstable. That I've always had issues. You believed her." I swallowed hard. "I did," I admitted. "I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize to me," she said. "We were kids in that house. We learned that Mom's version of reality was the only safe one. Of course you clung to it. It kept you from having to admit your whole life was built on her moods. How did you get out?" I whispered. "I left before I had time to get sick of my own reflection," she said. "You stayed. You became the responsible one. There's no shame in that. But now that you know, you get to choose something else." "Choose what?" I asked. "She's in a hospital bed down the hall. She thinks she's dying. Or she's pretending to think she's dying. Either way, I'm the one they're going to call when she wants ice chips or drama." "You can choose not to play the game," Lacey said. "You can set boundaries. You can say no." "Have you met our mother?" I asked. "Saying no is like waving a red flag at a bull. Then let her charge at someone else for once," Lacey said. You have kids. You have a husband. You have yourself. The next morning, Mom was sitting up in bed, eating hospital pancakes and complaining about the syrup. Corn syrup, she sniffed. It's poison. They're trying to kill me faster. The doctor says you're going home this afternoon, I said. Your lungs are clear. Your heart's fine. You're dehydrated. Of course I'm dehydrated, she said. No one ever brings me enough water. They also said, I continued, forcing my voice to stay steady, that there's no record of any cancer treatment. Anywhere. She froze, fork halfway to her mouth. We've been through this, she said. I told you the records are missing. Yes, I heard, I said. Funny how the lab results for your UTIs and your Xanax prescriptions are all there, though. It's like everything's there except the cancer. Her eyes narrowed. Why are you talking to me like this? She demanded. I'm your mother. I'm sick whether you like it or not. You're supposed to be on my side. What exactly are you sick with? I asked quietly. Because it's not cancer. She slammed her fork down. Fine, she snapped. If the little doctor wants to split hairs, maybe the tumors have shrunk. Maybe the chemo worked. Maybe it's a miracle. You ever think of that? Or are you so determined to paint me as a liar that you can't accept good news? What chemo? I asked. What oncologist? Tell me their names. You think I remember every white coat I've seen? She demanded. You think I take notes while they tell me I'm dying? Yes, I said. I think if someone told me I had cancer, I'd write down every word. I took a deep breath. I called Lacey. Her face twisted. Of course you did, she said. That girl lives to turn you against me. She said this isn't the first time you've done something like this. I said. She said you've been using illness to control us since we were kids. Mom's eyes filled with tears so fast it was like a faucet turning on. I was exhausted, she wailed. I had 3 children and a husband who worked all the time. I had no help. If I needed to say I was sick to get you to stop tearing the house apart, that was my right. We were children, I said. You made us skip birthdays and weddings and school trips because you felt faint. You threatened to die if we moved out. You told everyone I abandoned you when I went to community college 2 towns over. You did abandon me, she said. After everything I did for you, I gave you life. I fed you. I kept a roof over your head. I could have left. I could have run away. Do you have any idea how tempting that was? You tell me every time we argue, I said. You also told everyone you had cancer. You took their money. You let them pray over you. Lacey thinks you might have a mental illness called factitious disorder. The doctor hinted at it. Have you ever heard that term? For the first time, something like fear flickered in my mother's eyes. Then she squashed it with anger. So now I'm crazy, she spat. Is that it? You're going to throw me in a psych ward because I'm inconvenient? That doctor doesn't know me. Lacey doesn't know me. None of you know what it's like to be me, to be alone after your father died, to have your body fall apart and nobody care. She started to cry in earnest now, loud, gulping sobs that drew glances from the hallway. A nurse peeked in, eyebrows raised. I forced a smile. We're okay, I said. Just a family disagreement. You're trying to kill me, Mom sobbed. First you don't believe my cancer, now you want to lock me up. I should have never trusted you. I should have never moved in. There it was. The twist that turned me from caregiver into villain in her narrative. I took a breath. You're going to have to move out, I said. The words surprised even me. They'd been forming in the back of my mind since that doctor said factitious, but I hadn't planned to say them out loud yet. Once they were in the air, though, I couldn't grab them back. Mom went very still. Excuse me, she whispered. You're going to have to move out. I repeated, my voice shaking. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep rearranging my life around illnesses that may or may not be real. I can't explain to my kids why Grandma is always too sick to come to their concerts but somehow well enough to post selfies at Panera with her church friends. I can't watch you lie to people who love you and call it survival. Where exactly do you expect me to go? She asked, her voice low and dangerous now. A motel. We'll work with social services, I said. There are senior housing options. You have Social Security, some pension from Dad's job. We'll figure it out. But you can't live with us anymore. You're throwing a sick old woman onto the street, she said. Do you hear yourself? Do you know what people will say? They'll probably say I'm a monster, I said. But the ones who have been around for the last 5 years might also say they've watched you drain me dry. I'm choosing my kids. And myself. I'll kill myself, she said suddenly. Her eyes were flat, almost bored. If you abandon me, I'll have nothing to live for. I'll just stop taking my medications. I'll waste away. Then you'll have a real funeral to plan. In the past, that sentence would have sent me into a spiral of panic and appeasement. This time, an article I'd read last night came back to me about how people with factitious and borderline traits use suicide threats to keep loved ones in line. The advice had been clear. Take it seriously, but don't let it control you. If you feel like hurting yourself, I said slowly, I'll call the crisis hotline. They can help you. But I'm not going to keep you in my house because you're threatening to die if I don't. That's not fair to me or to Tom or to the kids. You'd call the cops on your own mother, she demanded. What kind of daughter are you? The kind who's done being manipulated, I said. Her eyes blazed. You ungrateful, she started, then cut herself off as a nurse walked in with discharge papers. Mrs. Miller, the nurse said cheerfully, looks like you're good to go. We'll get you set up with some follow-ups. Don't bother, Mom snapped, wiping her eyes. My daughter has decided I'm not sick. We're still recommending you see your primary care doctor, the nurse said, glancing between us. And maybe a counselor. It's a lot to navigate. You have no idea, I muttered. Getting her out of the hospital and back home was a blur. She alternated between crying silently in the passenger seat and cursing me under her breath. You'll see, she said as we pulled into the driveway. When I'm gone, you'll regret this. You'll wish you'd been kinder. I've been kinder for 47 years, I said. I'm tired. Over the next few weeks, I did exactly what I told her I would. I called her primary care doctor and requested her full records. There was no cancer. There were repeated notes about somatic complaints, dramatic effect, and patient declines referral to psychiatry. I called the insurance company and asked if they'd ever received claims for chemo or oncology. They had once 3 years ago. The claim had been denied as fraud. The provider name was a generic shell corporation. My mother had tried to bill for treatments she never received. I pulled my credit report and found 3 credit cards I hadn't known about. They were in my name, opened when I was too busy to check the mail carefully. The charges were for medical travel, supplements, and a lot of restaurants and online shopping. The balances made me sit down on the kitchen floor and cry. When I confronted her, she shrugged. I needed help, she said. You're my daughter. Who else was I supposed to turn to? You were supposed to ask me, I said. Not pretend to be me. You would have said no, she replied. You always say we can't afford things. I'm dying, Rachel. I wanted a few nice meals. Few trips. Is that a crime? Yes, I said. Actually, identity theft is a crime. Insurance fraud is a crime. Lying to an entire community to get GoFundMe money under false pretenses is, I don't even know what the legal term is, but it's wrong. You'd send your own mother to jail? She asked, eyes wide. After everything I've done for you? I've already spent 5 years in prison, I said. I just didn't know it. I called my brother. Mark, I said, Mom doesn't have cancer. There's no record of treatment. She's been lying. She opened credit cards in my name. She tried to commit insurance fraud. We have to come up with a plan. There was a long silence. I was afraid of that, he said finally. You knew. I demanded. You knew and you didn't tell me? I suspected, he said. Stuff didn't add up. The timelines, the meds, the way she always got worse when there was an audience and better when there wasn't. But every time I tried to bring it up, you shut me down. You'd say, "Mark, she's sick, she's scared, stop being so cynical." I didn't want to be the bad guy again. Again? I asked. She told everyone you never cared. I reminded him. He laughed bitterly. Yeah, he said. That's what happens when you refuse to co-sign her reality. She told you I never helped financially, right? Didn't you? I asked. You always said money was tight. I sent her $500 a month for 3 years, he said. Direct deposit. She told me not to mention it to you because she didn't want you to feel bad that you couldn't match it. I found out about the GoFundMe from a friend. She was double-dipping and playing us off each other. When I confronted her, she said I was attacking a dying woman. So I stopped. I couldn't do it anymore. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, feeling sick. We're idiots, I said. We're children who grew up with a mother who cried wolf so often we forgot wolves were real. He said. What are you going to do? I told her she has to move out. I said. I can't keep living like this. The kids are walking on eggshells. Tom is done. I'm done. Do you want help? He asked. If you mean physically moving her stuff, yes, I said. If you mean dealing with the emotional fallout, absolutely. The day we told Mom her move-out date, she put on her best performance. You're all turning on me, she sobbed, clutching her chest. My own children. I should have never had kids. This is my reward for dedicating my life to you. Abandonment. We're not abandoning you, Mark said, surprisingly calm. We're helping you transition to senior housing. You'll have neighbors your age, activities, transportation. It'll be good for you. You just don't want to look at me, she spit back. My suffering makes you uncomfortable. Your suffering has swallowed our lives, I said. Real or exaggerated, it's the only thing we've been allowed to talk about for years. I need to breathe. Lacey flew in for the move. Seeing her walk up our driveway was like seeing a ghost. Mom refused to come out of her room when she arrived. I don't want to see that girl, she said. She'll just gloat that she was right. Lacey rolled her eyes. I told you so never felt less satisfying, she murmured to me in the hallway. If it makes you feel any better, I'm more sad than smug. We went through Mom's things. There were stacks of sympathy cards, arranged in neat piles by year. Notebooks full of her handwriting, documenting every slight, every perceived neglect. Rachel didn't bring me tea until 10:07 a.m. Mark hasn't called in 4 days. Lacey is probably on drugs. There were also envelopes of cash, tucked inside her Bible and under her mattress. For emergencies, she'd written on one. The total was more than I had in my savings account. She could have paid off one of your cards with this, Lacey said quietly. She could have hired a home health aide. She could have gone to a real therapist. She bought clothes and lunches with church ladies, I said, holding up receipts. Why am I not surprised? On moving day, a van from a low-income senior apartment complex pulled up. The social worker, a kind woman named Denise, helped Mom fill out paperwork while Mom sniffed and made comments about ending up in a warehouse for old people. This isn't punishment, Denise said patiently. This is a resource. A lot of folks thrive here. I'll be dead in a month, Mom replied. Then you can have my spot. At one point when Mark was carrying a box out, Mom turned to me and said very calmly, If you walk out that door and leave me here, you're not my daughter anymore. I thought about being 7 years old, sitting on the edge of my bed while she cried because I hadn't folded the towels right and saying, I'll do better, Mommy, just to make it stop. I thought about being 17, turning down a full scholarship because she said, You want me to die alone in this house? I thought about every time I'd swallowed my own needs so she wouldn't call me selfish. I'm your daughter whether I like it or not, I said. Blood doesn't evaporate. But I don't have to be your caretaker. Not like this. She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. Who taught you to talk to me like that? She whispered. Therapy, I said. And exhaustion. It's been 2 years since that day. Mom still lives in the senior complex. She's popular there. Of course she is. She has a new audience. She has a scooter now, courtesy of Medicare, and uses it to zip up and down the hallways telling anyone who will listen about her ungrateful children. Every few months, I get a call from Denise or another social worker when Mom's symptoms escalate. She says she has cancer, they'll say. We're not seeing that in her records. Has there been any change? No, I say. She's had some tests. Nothing malignant. She has a history of exaggerating illness. Do you want to be involved in her care? They ask. I'll make sure she's safe, I say. But I can't go back to being her everything. I have my own family. Sometimes I visit. I bring groceries, the ones her budget doesn't cover. She alternates between fawning over me and ignoring me. This is my devoted daughter, Rachel. She'll tell her neighbors one day. She saved my life when I had cancer. The next time, she'll hold court in the common room about how I abandoned her, not realizing I can hear every word from the doorway. I used to correct her. Now I don't. Let her tell whatever story she needs to keep living with herself. I know the truth. My siblings and I have an uneasy peace. Mark and I text now. He sends me pictures of his kids. Sometimes we joke about the weird things Mom says the same way soldiers joke about war. Lacey and I talk more. We compare notes on setting boundaries with toxic parents. We compare therapy bills. We send each other memes about eldest daughter syndrome and laugh until we cry. My kids are okay. Better than okay some days. Emma is in college studying psychology because of course she is. I want to help people like you, she says. The ones who don't realize they're drowning until someone names the water. Josh still has trouble trusting that I'll show up when I say I will. I missed a lot of his games. I'm trying to make up for it. I show up even when it's just practice now. I sit in the bleachers and cheer like a fool. He rolls his eyes, but he smiles. Tom and I went to couples counseling. We had to. 5 years of living with a person whose entire emotional barometer is set by her mother does damage. He told me, gently but firmly, that if I ever moved Mom back in, he would move out. I believe him. I also believe I won't do that because I like my life now. It's quieter. Boring even. Boring is underrated. And yet, there are nights when I lie awake and hear my mother's voice in my head. I'm dying, she'll say in my memory. You'll regret this when I'm gone. I imagine the phone call I'll get someday. The real one. The one where she actually is dying, not just performing death. I wonder if I'll go. If I'll sit by her bed and hold her hand and let her rewrite history one last time. Or if I'll stay home and light a candle and grieve the mother I needed instead of the one I got. That's the thing no one tells you about growing up with a parent like mine. Even when you see through the lies, even when you untangle yourself from their drama, the guilt never fully leaves. Just gets quieter. So that's my story, internet strangers. I spent 5 years caring for a mother I believed was dying of cancer, only to find out she'd likely never had it. She faked evidence, manipulated doctors, lied to our community, drained my finances, and pitted me against my siblings, all for attention and control. When I finally confronted her and set boundaries, I became the villain in her story. She tells anyone who will listen that I threw her away. I tell myself I rescued my kids and myself from a lifetime of walking on eggshells around a never-ending illness that may never have existed. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you keep taking care of a parent who lies about being sick because she's still your mom and you only get one? Or would you do what I did? Move her out, cut off the money, step back from the chaos, and accept that half your family and half your town will think you're heartless for refusing to play along with the story that was never true in the first place?